You're listening to Neurodivergent Mates. Hello and welcome to another episode of Neurodivergent Mates. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, and today we're going to be going over Beyond Imagination, writing with Aphantasia and Autism with Alina Bellchambers. Alina, did I get that right?
Very close. We were just before this started, we were just talking about pronunciations, and I don't think either of us have managed to get it quite right yet, but close enough.
Totally. But Alina, thank you so much for being here today. We've already jumped on. We've had some pretty cool conversations, but I think there'll be a lot more to go through during the show here today. But look, before we do get into it, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping just so we're all aware of some things. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, please subscribe, like, and follow to all of our social media platforms. We're available on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Also, too, if you're listening to us on the podcast, so not the live version, please subscribe, follow us, do whatever you have to do to help with the algorithm to get the podcast out there further. Now, just a bit of a heads up, if you haven't already done so, please check out all the work we're doing at Neurodiversity Academy. You can check that out at neurodiversityacademy.com. Now, I'm not sure. I don't have a feeling it will be. Who knows? It might be. But look, we'll do a little bit of a warning. Some discussions may be triggering. If you need help, please reach out to a loved one or call emergency services. We are not doctors. This is a space for sharing experiences and strategies. Now, if you are listening to us through one of the live platforms, so through Facebook or whatever that might be, if you've got a question, just put it straight into the comments there, and we might be able to answer them if they come through. You ready to rock and roll, Alina?
Yeah, I'm all set.
All right, nice. So, before we sort of came on, before we were having a really good conversation about, I suppose, what your journey's like and all of that. But so to kick things off, could you maybe introduce yourself and, share a little bit about your journey into writing and all of that?
Sure. So I'm Alina Bellchambers. I'm the author of The Order of Masks, which you can actually probably see behind me. I don't know if I need to hold it up. And The Weight of Crowns as well, which just came out, I think, 2 weeks ago. And I grew up in my family bookstore. So I got to live the dream of being in a bookstore after hours, and I got to, pick things out for customers and get book recommendations and all the fun things. So I really loved that. It was actually a mind, body, and spirit bookstore, but I spent all my time in the fiction section. And some of my earliest memories were of stopping customers and reading them short stories that I had written. So I think a few customers still remember me, and they still sometimes come up to me and say, I remember this short story. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh, wow.
But yes, and I actually ended up studying psychology at university, and I've got a background in acting as well. But all my life I've been writing, and it's been as much a passion as a therapy for me. And so it's been really wonderful to get to a point where I'm pursuing it as a career. And I've kind of let go of any expectations of what my life should look like, or having, a standard 9-to-5 job. And I just really love to pursue the writing as full-time as possible. And I have various other jobs like working in retail and acting, as I mentioned, to support my writing.
Yeah, nice. It's, you hear so many people like they have grown up in like music stores. Their parents have owned music stores, and yours was a bookstore type of thing. So it's no wonder you've gone down the route of like writing books and all of that. Personally, for myself being dyslexic, I think if my parents owned a bookstore, it probably would have been the worst thing ever for me. I would have loved the picture books. I think.
You could have done that.
Yeah, totally. But reading for me, I think that was definitely not a fun part of my life. But I'm a lot better reader than what I used to be, But look, I think you know, and we are going to go through this a little bit more, but can you sort of maybe share a little bit about, you know, your autism and I can't even pronounce, how did we pronounce it again?
Aphantasia, I'm hoping that that's right, or tasia, something like that.
Totally.
And I was going to say, Will, everyone's got different strengths, because I know we're going to touch more on aphantasia soon, but I just wanted to say, you know, the fact that you're dyslexic, but you can visualize really strongly, whereas, you know, I can't visualize anything. So it's interesting. We've all got different strengths and our brains all work in different ways.
Yeah, and can you actually explain? So, you know, there might be a few people, listeners on here, who haven't heard of, like, you know, what you live with there. Can you explain that a little bit more? So they're sort of like, because they're probably thinking, hey, man, you've got like this great visual type of thing, but for me, I don't have that at all type of thing. So can you explain that a little bit more? Because you and I were just having a really great chat around that type of thing. I think it'd be really cool for our listeners to find out a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I went through life not knowing that I had it for a very long time. And when people would say that they could visualize things, or, you know, the mind's eye, I thought that that wasn't literal. I thought it was just a saying. You know, people said the mind's eye, but that actually couldn't see in pictures. And I got to the point where I was actually studying for an exam in university, and the lecturer was talking about, you know, how to prepare for it. And it was all about visualization techniques to help in an exam situation. And I looked around the class and everyone was nodding along and everyone was talking about, you know, how they can visualize things in their minds. And I'm thinking, what? This is an actual thing? And honestly, it was a bit panicky at the time. I was thinking, wait, I can't do this at all. And but now I'm sort of used to that. And I can't necessarily imagine, you know, a different way. But it is tough in the sense that, you know, if someone asks me to describe a friend or describe my parents even, I can say what I know about them. So I can say, you know, for instance, I know that this person has like dark hair and they've got blue eyes, but I can't visualize anything in my mind. So all the little nuances of appearance and things like that, I just would struggle with that. And I mean, Will was asking, yeah, sorry, you go.
Yeah, oh, well, I think you're about to talk about what I was going to ask. And we'll sort of say, like, so if you ended up, someone like robbed you or something and they said, hey, can you give a description of what this person looks like? You wouldn't be able to do that.
No, I'm, I would not be a very good witness, a very reliable witness, unfortunately. I would be able to, if I really notice something about the person that I've just got in my memory, like, oh, it was really distinctive, I can say that. But appearance is very different for me.
You know what? I wouldn't want to be like with you if I ended up getting robbed or something and they're like, did anyone else see it? I'm like, yeah. Geez, can't remember. I seriously can't remember. And that's not paying you out or anything like that.
No.
I think it's like wow, that is interesting. Out of curiosity, Bart, like you were talking about in when you're in university and they said, hey, visualize this. How did you end up getting through university, out of curiosity, with that? And maybe what were some of the measures that you put into place? That's interesting.
Okay, look, I really struggled with anything where it's an assessment or an exam-based test. And anything that involves memory and visualization was really, really hard. So I found that I was great with assignments because obviously I had time to plan and do all of that. But yeah, the test situation, the anxiety in that and the memory side of things, it was really hard. I would rely completely on short-term memory. So it would be really like rote learning. And and not having that opportunity to really visualize notes or be able to call them up in an exam situation did make it really tough. I mean, it's something that I think really should be acknowledged in, you know, university and in those situations if you do have something like aphantasia, because it's fairly unusual. And so when you talk to people about it, I think a lot of the time they don't know about it. Hopefully it's becoming a bit more known now, but it's definitely something that affects those situations. And I mean, I'd love to talk more about the academic side, but I struggled, you know, even with the because I'm autistic, struggled with that, you know, in school and fitting in, and, you know, on the academic side as well with that, to the point where actually when I was in high school, so I mean, I probably can't say the name of the school, but
That's all right.
my parents, they knew I was struggling. They moved me to this exclusive all-girls school, and I was really struggling to really fit in there, and deal with like sensory issues and not fitting in. And even the aphantasia side of things was making academics hard, but I didn't even know that at the time. But yeah, and so they called in my parents and they said, she's not so-and-so material, like I wasn't that school material. And the implication was that I wasn't going to, you know, like amount to anything in the academic space. And so my parents actually pulled me out of school, and because my mental health was just so poor at that time. And I spent 6 months at home, and I was sleeping during the day and I was up at night writing, and I just had to retreat from the world and live in fictional characters' heads.
Which has sort of gone into where you're going into now, yeah?
Exactly. Yes, very much so. And that's what I guess I mean when I say writing is like a therapy for me. It's really saved my life, you know, through a lot of times that have been quite tough.
No, that's awesome. Sorry, can I just ask, have you got like cockatoos outside of your window?
I do. Can you hear them as well? Oh,
yeah,
no.
yeah. It's okay. It's okay. But we do, I think we have a fair few American listeners on here. So for our American listeners, that noise in the background is like cockatoos. So they're sort of like white birds with like I won't get you to describe them. Would you be able to describe them? Yeah,
no,
so
I can see them, so I can describe them. They've got like a yellow kind of plume.
Yeah, like a mohawk type of thing, and they're white type of thing, and they're really loud.
And they're just getting ready for bed at the moment in the trees just right outside my study. So the trees look like this, almost looks like it's snowing because there's just white everywhere.
Yeah, crazy. So if you do hear that in the background, that's what that is there. Hey, sorry, just before we do go into it, because I think it's really important. When you did disclose with the university, I'm assuming, did you disclose with the university about your issue once you sort of found out?
What was not autism.
Yeah. Well, both. Did you end up doing both?
No, because I was late diagnosed autistic. And so I only officially had the diagnosis last year. And by that time, I had completed my university degree. It took me 6 years to complete it, which probably shows, you know, how hard it was. And it's partly because I was pushing myself being in the psychology honours pathway, and you have to have quite a high GPA to stay in the honours pathway. And so there was a lot of additional pressure. And to be honest, it was hard enough just being in that space without all of the additional things.
You know, obviously with my company, Neurodiversity Academy, a big thing that we're looking at is, you know, identifying the schools that, I mean, tertiary education providers that better understand neurodivergent people, all of that. Now, what I'm sort of getting at is if you had been able to be at a school that would have understood that and been able to put proper practices in place for that, do you think maybe you would have got through that a lot better? What are your thoughts?
Definitely. I think that is so important. And I really wish that I had that knowledge when I was growing up and in school and in university, and I had been able to be somewhere that would make accommodations and that understood that. And I wish that I'd understood myself. Because I think that's the thing with being diagnosed with autism, is that it's given me this real sense of self-acceptance and the ability to sort of think about what I need to do in terms of putting boundaries in place and in terms of being able to cope with life. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a magic fix, because you've still got the struggles, but you can put a name to them. You know, you can understand and you can be kinder to yourself, because that's something that I really haven't been. I've really had in my head that, okay, this is what I should be doing. This is what everyone else seems to be doing, and had very high expectations. And yeah, it would have been much better if I could have made accommodations, in those settings. Yeah.
Yeah, and also too that now you've been diagnosed, and I know this is going off a little bit off track, but like I think it just fits in well with everything. Are you were saying that you were really struggling to fit in, right? When you were at that school and everything. Do you find that now, especially that you know yourself a hell of a lot better, that you're able to connect with people maybe more like yourself, and you feel like you're able to fit in a lot more now?
Yeah, I think again it comes into that sense of self-acceptance. When I was, if we're going way back, when I was really young, I wasn't able to mask, and I'm assuming a lot of the listeners on here will know what masking is, but that's basically being able to disguise autistic or neurodivergent traits and sort of present well in society, or present neurotypically. And so when I was really, really young, I felt like I was in a fog. Nothing made sense. In school, I always felt like I was out of step. The social rules and conventions just didn't quite compute at that age. And I wasn't at a place where I could sort of mask and hide that. And so as a result of that experience growing up and feeling like the odd one out and feeling like I was strange, or you know what I mean? When I got into, high school, it was very much about trying to learn how to dress a certain way, how to present a certain way. I got into modeling very, very young, which was something that I really fixated on, actually. It was a hyper fixation for me, because it was almost like a way of working out how to fit in. And it was like, how to be cool. Here's this blueprint, right? Or that's what I thought. But it was also really tough from an identity standpoint, because my identity became all about, okay, what do I look like? What are these external factors, and how much am I worth depended on, everything that's external. So I think that was really my journey through high school. And it did get to a point where I was very good at presenting a certain way and hiding, that sort of, against the, mimicking the neurotypical behaviors. But I didn't really have the sense of identity, and I was really burnt out from it and very depressed in the school situation and struggling a lot.
It's quite interesting, because if I look back to, and a lot of people when I was in high school, they were all like, oh yeah man, you were like the you were the cool popular dude. And for me, right? Yeah, right. And I'm thinking, what? I was the cool popular dude? Like, I honestly didn't feel like that. And I think back to it now, and obviously we sometimes associate masking more with autistic people. But, I think with other neurodivergent people, we do as well. I think for me, I was definitely putting on a facade to really try to be this person that I wasn't. And I think as well, especially once I did get into those later teens, that was where, drugs and alcohol really took an effect on my life, because I was going into situations where I'm like, oh my God, I just need this to almost like black everything out so I can just perform, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I think for me, maybe luckily for me, alcohol actually doesn't seem to have an effect, which is, I don't know.
That is pretty, what, can you just like keep drinking and nothing happens?
It makes me feel tired and out of it and dizzy, and then I get really anxious the next day. So I don't drink alcohol as a result of that. It doesn't get me out of my head. I think if something had really gotten me out of my head and allowed for that, it would have been very hard to avoid. because that's what I desperately wanted. But having said that, writing does. So there you go.
And you know what? I think that will actually flow into the next one really great, you know. So, you know, when we first started, you spoke about how you grew up surrounded by stories in your family's bookshop in Adelaide there. Now, how did that environment shape your love for storytelling?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's the smell of the new books, you know, is something that really, you know, always.
Sorry, can I just say I do love a crisp, a brand new book. A crisp new book is like the best feeling ever.
So cool. And no, like to this day, and I know we're talking about, you know, the fact that I can't necessarily like hear and smell things and see things with aphantasia, but certainly, you know, if I pick up a book and I smell that new book smell, it does bring me back, you know, to my childhood. No, it was just very special. There was a fountain in the middle of the bookstore, believe it or not, and it had chairs around it where people could sit and read, and it was just very tranquil and idyllic.
Very relaxing.
Very relaxing, yes. And no, it was really quite wonderful. And I think my parents used to say that I would be an author one day, so they clearly saw the early signs of that, and that was well before I thought that I would be. And I got to a point where I was writing kind of different endings to books that I was reading and loving, or I wanted to read more of a certain character, so I would then write more from a certain character. I guess kind of like fan fiction was my very early kind of attempts. And then I started writing, you know, original stories really for myself. I think my very first one started because I ran out of books to read and I was going on an overseas trip and I wanted something to read on the plane. So I decided to write a 100,000 word fantasy book.
Wow, that's pretty crazy because like I've wrote a book and that was 10,000 words. 100,000, that would have taken you ages.
Yeah, it does. It does take a long time, but I mean, I do tend to be quite prolific in terms of writing. Like I've got a 600,000 word sci-fi series that I wrote just for fun. And to put that in perspective, I mean, I probably shouldn't admit this because it makes it sound strange, but I actually wrote it because it was just for me, and it was just on the one document. I didn't even bother with chapters.
You just kept on going. Sorry, how long did that take? How long did that take, out of curiosity?
Oh my goodness. That was a process. I would start to read it probably when it was about like the 70,000 word mark. I was reading it, but I would keep building on it. And so it took probably about maybe 5 years to complete.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Without any chapters or anything like that.
Without any
but you know what? You probably could put it into Chat GPT now and say, hey, can you make chapters and all of that type of thing? You know what I mean? But I'm assuming that would destroy what you sort of created.
It would. What I could do is I could do that myself, but I feel like it would need the human element, like the feel of it. And I'd need to, one thing that I always really like to do with my chapters, which I do in the order of masks and the weight of crowns, is I end every single chapter on a cliffhanger. And so my publisher actually said to me that she felt like she could publish a whole book just with those endings of every chapter. So I'm quite particular. So I would definitely have to rewrite it with chapters in mind.
Because right, your books, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're sort of like Game of Thrones type of thing, correct? Right? And if you like, I didn't read the Game of Thrones book, but I watched the thing. There was always a cliffhanger, and you're like, oh my god, I can't. So similar type of thing, right?
Exactly. I've got all the morally grey characters. I'm quite fascinated by those sorts of characters, I think, with my background in psychology and interest in criminology. And so you've got that, you've got the court politics. It's really quite cutthroat court politics. You know, it's like, who's going to claim the crown? Who's going to betray who to get there? Which allies can you trust? It's a little bit Roman inspired. So it's got sort of gladiatorial games in it as well. It's got magical orders, like seers, warriors, and basically magical assassins. So yeah, it was very fun to write. It's very much an epic fantasy with big countries and battles and things like that. Yeah.
And so you know, obviously you got into your acting and all of that type of stuff as well. But do you feel that the reason why you got into acting was because you wrote all of these things? You actually wanted to play the characters as well?
Definitely. I think it goes back to masking. That's really what got me into acting, because at one point I was feeling like, and I feel like I've built my sense of identity a lot more now. But when I was a lot younger, it would almost feel like I would change identities depending on who I was talking to, because I was trying to present, neurotypically without even realizing what I was trying to do. And so it made sense to go into acting. It was just a natural extension of what I was already doing effectively. And I've always felt an affinity for that. I feel like I empathize really, really strongly, probably too strongly. I feel like it's quite, it almost feels like I don't have that, I don't know, that emotional second skin, it just feels like anything that I feel, it just goes, it's very strong. And certainly, like I have issues with, like if I'm criticized or I feel like I've done something wrong or anything like that, I'm still trying to work on building that resilience to try and deal with those things. But that's a long way of saying that, yes, I gravitated towards acting, and I can very much put myself in a character's head and feel the way that they might be feeling in that situation. And so it's quite cathartic. It's very much like writing. Writing and acting are both cathartic in that way. Yeah.
And that's probably why some of the best actors in the world are autistic, right? Because that's what they've been doing their whole life. It's acting a lot of the time,
Exactly. And I mean, I worried about, sort of coming out as autistic and what the response was going to be. One, because when I grew up as a child, I grew up in a family environment that it's more relaxed now, but at the time was very much about, what will people think of you? Always sort of worrying about presenting well, like never saying what you truly think and feel unless it's positive and it paints you in a really fantastic light. And so it was almost that old-fashioned approach where you don't admit if you're depressed, you don't talk about anxiety.
And I think that was a normal thing back when we were younger,
It was, definitely. And it's so nice that things have changed now and people are so open about it. So I was worried when I was diagnosed last year with autism about what the reception would be, sort of coming out with it. And also because I'm very high masking. So I present so well in social situations now because I've worked so hard to do so, that I was thinking, are people going to be able to relate to the fact that I am autistic and I have these struggles that happen behind the scenes. And I've been really, pleasantly surprised with the fact that people have been so open and receptive. And, my parents, I think as well, have been really supportive with me being open about it, because they see now it's so important for me to be authentic and not to keep hiding and masking and presenting and that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's almost like a weight off your shoulder, right? And how much easier does everything start to become?
Exactly, because you're being true to yourself and you're not even caring about what are people going to think of you because of this. It's part of who you are, and it's nice to be able to start acknowledging that. And actually, the original inspiration for the Order of Masks was about a mother and daughter on the run from this magical order, the Order of Masks, where you could take on anyone's identity, but at the cost of your own. So it was very much inspired by that concept of masking and losing your own identity. But as the series has progressed, what's been really lovely is that it's been more about Mira and Scarlett coming into their own and becoming their authentic selves, and not so much about masking and pretending, but working out who they are and really fighting for that.
Yeah, awesome. So there's a real sort of a little bit of your own sort of experience in there. Yeah, definitely. Awesome stuff. But look, let's take it back just a little bit here. Now, you've spoken about writing being a retreat for you during difficult times growing up. Can you tell us what that role played in your life back then? So, and you sort of shared a little bit about it in regards to, school and all of that. Was it about like putting down what you were feeling at that point and turning that into a story, or turning it around as if like, okay, I'm going to make this better than what I'm feeling now type of thing? I don't know. What were you thinking around that period?
I think it was more escapism. I just desperately needed to get out of my own head. And there was just something so wonderful about writing these characters. Also writing like really strong female characters, because that's what I always do, who really just don't care about what anyone else thinks, who, you know, can be quite morally gray. They can make all these really bad decisions, but they just get on with it. They're so resilient, and they have all these struggles that they overcome. And I have a great deal of respect for their ability to do that. And I think it was just very cathartic to write these characters, and to just live in their heads, live in their worlds. You know, I love the world building of fantasy. I think it's such a immersive escapism, you know, within that genre. And it was just what I needed. I just got to a point where I couldn't live in my own head. I couldn't stand it. And it was just, I was so down and so depressed. You know, there's been places where I really should have been sectioned. But as I said, you know, with my family, you know, they were concerned about what the ramifications of that would be. You know, if there's a record of me being sanctioned, you know, like that kind of thing, what it would do for my future. So as I said, we've been kind of dealing with that for a long time in terms of, you know, what people think. And so it's been really good to have the diagnosis and be more about, you know, actual acceptance and moving forward. But yes, definitely in terms of the writing, it's always been there. It's been my safe space. When nothing's making sense, when I feel out of step with everything else, I can just retreat and I can write these stories, and they go, there's nothing that sort of takes me by complete surprise. I feel like I'm in control when I'm writing them to an extent, but it's also just self-discovery and discovering who these characters are. And I think through their journeys against all the struggles, it makes you feel like you can deal with your own struggles as well.
Yeah, so it is like that release, like type of thing, being able to get what's in your head, all of that. See, I think for myself back in probably high school of that, I joined a band and all of that. And I was the lead singer, and, you know, writing lyrics, that was sort of like that release, and then being able to perform them. In your case, you know, it might be like releasing that book so other people can sort of take in that experience. I don't know if that was the same, but that's how I felt.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been really, really special to have the books out in the world and to have people messaging me and reading them and relating to the characters and the struggles. And I really feel like, well, what I want people to take away is to get to the end of the series and to feel like they've been on a real journey with Muir and Scarlett, and to feel like it's been transformative and it's been dramatic. But it's also been this, you know, this wonderful sort of full circle experience as well, and quite empowering. And yeah, it's something that is always really, really incredibly special is when I get a reader message me and say that they've been in a dark place, but that reading my series has helped them through it. That, you know, that reading The Order of Masks and The Weight of Crowns has been the escape that they desperately needed. Whenever I get a message like that, it just makes me feel like it's almost indescribable, because that's what books were for me. And that's what a lot of authors that I absolutely love have done for me. And so it's so special to think that, you know, I've done that for someone else.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like, especially with the work I'm doing with like Neurodiversity Academy, I get a lot of people going, "Oh man, what you're doing's really great." But for me, remember we were talking at the beginning how I visually see my goals, and I don't feel like I can visually, like, for example, right? And this might sound like, I don't know if it sounds cocky or whatever, right? But I remember as a kid, right? I would always like play like cars and Lego and all of that, right? And I remember, like, I want to be a successful business person, right? I want to build a successful people. I want to help people, right? But, right, I remember as a kid, I would like have all my Matchbox cars lined up. I'd have like this house, that like this big mansion, my boat, my Lego boat I made at the back there, and I would pretend I was like, and I sort of look at that now and I'm like, I was thinking about what I'm going to be like when I'm older type of thing, you know. I was visualizing that then type of thing. But what was I sort of getting at? But what I was trying to say before, I get a lot of people reach out to me type of thing, and they're like, oh, Will, you know, it's amazing what you're doing, all of that. And like I said, I visually see my goals, all of that. And sometimes I feel like, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or something like that, because I can't see the goals that I'm working towards in place yet, but people may be inspired by that type of thing, which I'm finding it a little bit hard because I'm like, I'm just not there yet. But it is working, if that makes sense.
That's good. Is it kind of like manifesting? Because I've heard that that's something
it could be manifesting, because what it is, I think a big thing, especially with business, like businesses are so hard, right? And like what I find is that, you know, in your head you can see everything, or in my head I can see everything, right? I know you probably would struggle with that. You know, I can see us making progress, right? And we're making awesome progress, but it's not quite there yet, right? So you could say it's manifesting, because it's like, oh my God, we're almost there, you know, come on, you know, things like that. And it can be so difficult at times, type of things. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. It is a good feeling when people do reach out to you and you sort of feel like, yeah, it's working. What I'm doing, you know, it is working, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think it's most powerful when someone reaches out and and your writing has made them feel something, you know, and it's given them some relief, you know, or distracted them from their lives, or just something with emotion. I think as soon as I hear that, more so than, you know, so I get readers saying, you know, oh, I loved it so much, and that's great. I love that. That's amazing. But it's when readers kind of message me and say, look, it's really changed my life, and I needed to read it when I was in a dark place. It's, you know, that kind of thing is really amazing.
Yeah, totally. You know, like I couldn't properly read until I was like 27, right? I was like very like now I can read pretty good. But you know, so the book that I actually learned to read from was, do you listen to music much?
I do, yes.
Yeah, okay. So you would obviously know who the Red Hot Chili Peppers are, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I don't know if you've ever read Anthony Kiedis's book Scar Tissue.
I don't think so.
Okay, that's fine. Not everyone would have read it, but I remember when I was traveling, right, that like you know, I'd gone to travel for a few years to escape, right? I needed to find myself. I was in a bit of a dark place. I really needed to find who I was, right? And I could hardly read back then, right? And it was almost like a experience to go out on my own and just learn, right? And I remember I was so poor, right, that I couldn't afford to go out and party and all of those types of things. But I remember everyone was reading this Scar Tissue book at this point in time, and people were like, oh man, this book's awesome and all of that. And I'm thinking, oh man, if only I could read, you know, I could experience the same things that these people. And I remember I got to a point and I was like, you know what, I'm actually going to, like, because I could sort of read, but there would just be some words that I just couldn't figure out. And I remember I made this game up where I was like, all right, now what I'm going to do, you're not allowed to move on until you've worded the word out and you've got it, then you can move on. So I remember I got through a page, got through a chapter, another chapter, and then the next thing I finished a book, right? And it was like, oh my God, I finished a book. And people looking at me like, yeah, man, I finished like 100 books, you know. But what I'm sort of getting at is that was almost that same feeling that these people are reaching out to you and saying, man, this has changed my life. You just don't know what you're doing, how that's affecting people, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And actually that reminds me too of my experience when I was reading. I was actually a slow reader to get started, which is really weird considering where I'm at now and the fact that, you know, I love books. But when I was really, really young, I was actually behind the rest of the class. And that's something that I've struggled with. I have a slight delay, like a learning delay whenever it's a new skill. But then I find that if I persist, I usually end up being really good at it if I really focus on it and like I knuckle down and it's almost that hyperfixation thing. But yeah, so I remember the very first book that I think the fantasy book that Dad was reading to me was Del Toro Quest. And I absolutely fell in love with fantasy. And then suddenly I just zoomed ahead and I was reading like year levels ahead, in school. And I was like just obsessed with the fantasy genre. So
are you into like your pop culture? Like, do you go to like Comic-Con and things like that? Like, do you get dressed up and everything?
Well, do you know what? I had a recent experience. I had a photo shoot on Monday for an amazing designer. She did such a good job. She's a TAFE student, and her designs are incredible. It was for like the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland. So it was, I'll have to post something on Instagram, but it had this massive, I think it was at least 10 meters, the skirt. So it's like coming way out for a train. I had to have about 4 people helping me sort of move around just to position me for the photos. But it was so elaborate, black and red. It really reminded me of one of my characters in particular, Scarlet from The Order of Masks, and kind of like a little bit villainous and like very dramatic, kind of ball gownish. So I feel like I have had the opportunity to dress up as my characters very recently, but it was fun. Yeah, I'd love to do something.
It's just a lot of neurodivergent people are into like that pop culture and stuff like that. And I was like, wonder if you're like into going to all of those things.
I would be, and I should do that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're actually pretty fun. Like I went to one of them one day and I didn't think I would like it, but it was actually pretty cool. I would have liked if there was like a bar there. Like, not that I'm a big drinker, but it would have just calmed my nerves a little bit in big crowds,
Oh, I feel you too as well. It's hard, isn't it? I think that's something that a lot of neurodivergent people relate to, is that social situations are stressful.
Totally. Yeah. Like, I think the hard thing is that, especially being ADHD, people can sometimes see that real extrovert, but sometimes when you're in like a busy crowd, you can become pretty introvert pretty quick. It's hard to explain, actually, unless you know what I mean.
I get you. And I think it's also just the sensory side of things. Like, I don't know if you find that as well, but for me, like really bright lights.
Well, clothes, like my wife and I, we spent the whole weekend going around and touching clothes just because I wanted to see if it's I like buttoned up, like long sleeve shirts, all of that, right? But if it's like I don't know, like some of those, like, say like a shirt you might use, say for like business shirt, it feels like cardboard almost. It's all like stiff, and I like something that's nice and soft. But trying to find a nice soft shirt is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, and it makes a lot more sense to me now. But when I was a kid, clothes, oh gosh, the sensory sort of overstimulation of it. Like if a piece of clothing is too tight, or if it was just like, it's like you can feel like your skin. I don't know, it's terrible.
Totally, I totally get it.
Tags and things like that. Yeah,
I totally get it.
I actually work in retail, so that's one of my jobs that I do 2 days a week, because that's pretty much all I can cope with. And and so I do that now, and I sort of work in the fashion side. But
do you struggle with people? Do you struggle with people like having to, because retail's very like, hi, how you going? Can I help you? Do you struggle with that?
Yeah.
So you must be burnt out afterwards, yeah?
Oh, yes. See, that's the thing. And I didn't even realize, but I would always be like that. Like after work, that's it. I need to be absolutely I need to be in silence. I can't deal with anything. I absolutely burnt out. Like I can't even, I'm not sure if I should be admitting this, but like after a full day in retail, like I can't even make dinner afterwards. Like it's too much for me. I just absolutely need to retreat. And but other than that, like I deal with it well when I'm there, and I can interact with customers, and I can present well. And I quite enjoy
masking. Well, it's your acting skills, right?
Exactly, yes. And I mean, it ties in with all my book events, because I have book launches that I go to, and I have podcasts like this, and I can do them, and I feel this sense of accomplishment. I enjoy the social back and forth and that element. It's just that afterwards I will be absolutely burnt out, and depending on how much effort I've put into socialization depends on, how long I need to retreat to my writing cave before I can come on out and do the next one.
Yeah, totally. So just moving on from that there, you also, so we know that you live with Anastasia, or however we pronounce it, which means you can't visualize images in your mind. Now, how does that affect the way you create such vivid and epic fantasy worlds and all of that? Because for me, I'd be thinking, oh yeah, you've got this and that and blah 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 blah, right? How does it all come together?
It's a really interesting question. Someone asked me recently, do I visualize scenes like a movie? No, I don't. I'm hopeful that it will get made into a movie one day, because I would love to be able to visualize my characters. Until then, I rely on character art a lot. That's really, really important for me. But in terms of the actual creative process, I find that it's actually been an asset, because what I do is I always do a second pass through every single manuscript that I write with visual descriptions and sensory descriptions in mind. So I will go right through, and I will evaluate every paragraph and think, okay, what's the sense of place like? And before I'm obviously starting a manuscript, when there's lots of countries and world building to do, I will create a map, and I'll have absolutely everything in mind. So I'll know exactly what I want to be describing, what I want things to look like. I will do a lot of research, and I'll do a lot of the visual imagery research as well. And I like to make sure that that's all in my books.
And that's before you even start writing, is that correct?
That's before I even start writing, in terms of the mapping out.
So do you have like a wall with like heaps of stuff on it, or do you do like do you have like a wall full of stuff?
Pretty much. I mean, I have basically just mounds of paper. So I need to, now that I've got this amazing study finally set up. I think I told you how I was previously on the kitchen table with my books piled up around me. But now that I've got this, and I've got a nice blank wall over there, I might start using the wall. But no, I have to really map everything out. I have to draw things. Like whenever I'm doing the fashion, for the characters, I will have drawings of exactly what the dresses are going to be looking like. I'll design everything.
Are you a good like drawer in that as well?
No, to be honest, drawing is not really my skill set. It's I can get by with it, but I wouldn't say that I'm super artistic when it comes to drawing. No. Stick with the writing and the acting side.
So do you collaborate a lot with, say, others who are that, for example?
I think that'd be really interesting. Now that I know a lot more designers and things, that could be something to bear in mind. But it's mostly just goes back to that research where I'm looking at, I'll often be looking at, various like fashion collections, and I'll be looking at, what they were wearing in certain time periods like Roman and medieval. And then I'll just start, kind of sketching. And I'm very creative, so I don't have an issue in terms of creating designs. I'm quite good at creating dress designs, for instance. It's just that my drawing skills leave something to be desired. But I can tell where I'm going with something. I can draw well enough that you can work out what's happening.
So this might sound funny, right? But let's say, I don't know if you would go out on a Saturday night with your friends or whatever, right? But let's say for me, I'd be able to go, okay, I'm going to wear the jeans. I'll look good with that. I'll wear this shirt with these shoes, right? I'm assuming you would have had to get out your clothes, get them all put there and go, no, let's change that and let's do this, right?
Yes, and that's interesting. I hadn't even thought of that. But no, I have to try on all my clothes unless I've got photos of previous events that I've done with the clothes. And then I usually think, oh, I can wear that outfit. That worked really well that day. And then I'll usually try it on and just make sure it's still working. Because, with the background in modeling, I'm very like, oh, well, how am I presenting today? So I have moved on, and I definitely... I think of it more of as a tool now than anything else, rather than taking it as seriously as I did when I was younger. And I do modeling, but I really have fun with it now, which is great. So yeah, it's been a really positive.
That's awesome. Sorry, and I do want to get into this. I want to finish it off with you just fully nailing everything about your book and all of that. But one thing I've been thinking about, right? did you find, especially, you know, you were talking about like your modeling stuff and all of that type of stuff, and especially with your masking and that and the modeling and all that, would you say that you sometimes maybe attracted the wrong people because you were so good at certain things like that, where they got the wrong not the wrong idea, but they just didn't realize who you actually were?
Oh, definitely. No, 100%. And that's something that I'm still conscious of now, because I still do it. I'm still so aware of like what I wear and how I present and looking good, that it's just become almost habitual. And then I'm thinking, well, inside I'm basically just this I don't know, kind nerd, basically.
Yeah.
You don't really fit the look. But it gives me that sense of externally feeling like I'm fitting in, which I lacked as a child. So it's important. And I guess that's my background in psychology. I'm thinking about sort of analyzing myself. But no, I did. I think particularly, I think when I was younger, it was probably too early for me to get into modeling, and it was a tough industry to be in terms of self-esteem. And I actually had to stop for a very long time and not do it because of my self-esteem. And whereas now I'm in a place where I've got a really friendly agency and it's just very relaxed sort of jobs that I do, and I have a lot of fun with them. And I enjoy the creative side of the fashion and meeting the people, and they're all very kind and very nice. But definitely, I think a lot of the time with boyfriends, I think.
Well, I was thinking that was what I was thinking. Did you probably dated some maybe dickheads maybe back in the day, right?
No, I think it does sometimes attract the wrong people, but then I think that very quickly they will realize that, okay, I'm this sort of person, and I've got these values, and if they're looking for, I don't know, like a casual good time, we're not going to be a fit. But I do have to say that part of the reason I actually discovered that I was autistic was I got out of a 5-year relationship. And in that 5-year relationship, because I hadn't known I was autistic, I was really trying hard to do everything I felt was standard in a relationship. So I was trying to be able to be there for him, to see him regularly, to actually.
You probably forgot about your own needs, correct?
Yeah, and I couldn't not mask with him. So every single instance that we were together, I was exhausted, and I would need time to be by myself to actually heal. And so, of course, a partner's not going to necessarily understand that you need time away from them. Otherwise, you're sick. You're not going to be able to cope. And of course, my writing time and things like that. And it was a fraught relationship with a lot of other issues in the relationship anyway. We just really weren't right for each other. And
then you probably would have found that your partner didn't understand your neurodivergence, and then would take you into situations where that was just like another thing on top. Like, I don't know, maybe you went to a crowded pub or something to socialize with his friends or something, where that would have been like a nightmare for you.
Exactly. Well, he was actually a DJ. So.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Which isn't a bad thing. Autistic people can still go to like a club and rock out to a DJ.
Oh yeah, you can, but it's not really my scene. But yes, no, it was a tough relationship. Certainly, the living together side of things, that just really pushed me over the edge, where I really wasn't ready to sort of commit to that with someone, and not being able to understand what my boundaries were. And I also went over to the unit that we shared, and I found that he was cheating on me. I literally found him. It's like a cliche. I walked in, and he was with another girl, and I realized.
Oh my God! In your own bloody apartment. That is.
Yeah, I know. So obviously that wasn't a great. And then I even tried to work it out with him after that.
Oh
and
my
basically,
God.
The anxiety of trying to work it out with someone and trying to build the trust up after that experience made me so sick that I got so anxious I couldn't even leave the house. And I was going to potentially lose my job and everything. And so I started seeing a psychologist. And she actually said to me, you know what, I don't think it's just anxiety. I think it's autistic burnout. And that's how I got referred for the autism assessment. And then suddenly my life has turned around because I've been able to understand what I need. And Yeah, honestly, I can't say anything else except that the diagnosis has genuinely saved my life. And I'm so grateful to have that. Yeah.
Totally. No, that's interesting. That's heaps interesting. But I want to get onto this part because this is, we're here to really push a book out there and
Yes.
all of that type
Oh,
of
yeah, of
stuff.
course. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
your duology, have I pronounced that correctly?
Yes,
The
that's
Order
correct.
of Masks and the Weight of
Mhm.
Crowns has been described as a feminist Game of Thrones. What
Mhm.
inspired these stories and the strong female protagonist? Did I
Yep.
pronounce that? At the
No, you got it
heart
right.
of
Great.
them. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I know you touched base on that before, but did you just want to maybe sort of go off that a little bit? Because I think we'll just end, like, we're getting close to the end, but I think it'll just be good to sort of really end it with these here.
Okay, great. Well, as I said earlier, there was definitely the masking and the autistic sort of inspiration and, two female main characters that are sort of coming into their own and becoming their authentic selves. But also because of my background in psychology, I'm really fascinated by morally grey characters like in Game of Thrones and putting them together in a really cutthroat situation where there's crowns and there's lives hanging in the balance. So I wanted to write a epic fantasy with really dramatic world building where you don't know if the characters are going to survive till the end or what the cost of their survival might be. And I wanted to focus on the two fierce female main characters and really elevate them because that's just so important to me. When I was younger, there weren't that many, female characters as main characters. And that's something that you see more of these days. But I think it's just great to have that. And I thought that was lacking in Game of Thrones for sure. But yeah, so kind of, so that's been really fun to write. But certainly it's been very much about Mira and Scarlett's journeys. Mira starts out being a circus performer on the run from a past her mother refuses to explain. And she ends up being forced to compete in the trials to save her own life. Scarlett is an illegitimate princess without power whose half-brothers are trying to kill her. She's also got a forbidden sort of relationship with a seer, but her father wants to marry her off. So she realizes that if she's ever going to have the chance to kind of have autonomy over her life, she needs power, which means the throne. So when she sees Mira, she sees an opportunity to alter the balance of power, but only if she can keep Mira alive through the trials and basically use her in a bloody bid for the throne. And of course, there's love interests. So, Mira finds herself caught between a really devious prince and, a ruthless princess, Scarlett, as well. And she's got, I shouldn't go into too much, but there's like enemies to lovers and things like that. And all the fun.
No, that sounds pretty awesome. They should make a movie out of that.
They should, yes.
Am I right? If there's any one who wants to make a movie out of this from Hollywood listening, definitely. I knew you it's first. Yeah. So no, awesome stuff there. Now, for our listeners, if they are listening and they want to check out your books or connect with you, what's the best thing to do?
So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, Facebook as well. So Facebook is just under my name, Alina Bellchambers, and everything else is Alina Bell Writes. So Alina and then BELL Writes. That's me on Instagram. And so Instagram is where I'm most active, and I really love connecting with readers on there. But yeah, pretty much anywhere.
Where can they get your books from? Do you have any signings coming up or anything like that?
Yeah, I've just got back from my national book tour. So I've been in Sydney and Melbourne for book tours and launches, and I've just had my Adelaide launch as well.
Oh, it's a pity I didn't do this before you came to Sydney, because I could have. I would have.
Another time I'll be coming.
You know what? I would have walked into your book signing and gone, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Don't you recognize me?"
Because that's something that we haven't even talked about yet. We've got too much to talk about in too little time. But but the facial recognition. But yes.
Totally.
Yeah, but no, I will be definitely hoping to do more interstate events around the place. But you can get my books pretty much any bookstore. And if they don't have it in stock, they can order it in for you. So any bookstore is fine. And also online through the Macmillan website, you can just type the Order of Masks or the Weight of Crowns, and they have all the various links. But I've got an audio book, so that's usually on Audible and Spotify, and I think a few other places. And of course, the ebook as well. So it's very widely available.
So if it's an audio book, have you done like the voiceover for it, or?
No, I always thought about it. I was almost going to say to my publishers, can I do the audiobook? But they chose someone who I really love, and I think she's done a great job. So she's done a really, really good job with the different voices. And in the UK, they actually have 2 different narrators. They have one for Mira and one for Scarlett, which is kind of cool.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. That's heaps cool. Wow. Crazy. Look what's going on these days. But look, thank you so much for coming on. We didn't get to go through all the questions or everything, but I think we've covered a fair bit there. So look, thank you so much for coming on today. Hopefully you had some fun. Did you have fun?
No, I absolutely had fun. It's great to chat with you. And I think it's so nice to have this podcast. I'm going to be a regular listener now too as well.
Yeah, definitely check out some of the other episodes and the new ones that are going to be coming out shortly. But what I will do, this comes out as a blog as well. So I'll try and link people back to your book, all of that thing, so people can check that out. And you can check that out at the Neurodiversity Academy website there. But look, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been really it's actually been quite mind-opening, especially sharing. Yeah, because it's something different that I've been wanting to learn about for a while. So it's actually been really good. So thank you so much. Thanks. I hear the cockatoos must have gone to bed now. So,
I think they're settled now.
Yeah, totally. But look, thank you so much for coming on. And for anyone else who hasn't already done so, please subscribe, like, and follow to all of our social media platforms. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, and this is Neurodivergent Mates. Till next time.